Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and I'm your host of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and today I'm here with Laura Buckley, and she is all about how to structure business, leadership, and so we're going to dive into that, and then we're also going to talk about juggling the mom. So without further ado, Laura, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
All right. Hi, everybody. Charisse, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Laura Buckley. I started my career as a registered dietitian and Army officer, and then found my real passion in teaching and coaching and leadership development. So I made the transition into that area, and now I run a business focused on helping leaders create cultures where they and their teams can really thrive and support both their professional and personal well-being.
Thank you. So the market, I don't know, I just feel like, and I've talked with lots of people, but over the last few months, I feel like and it might be because of the election coming, but I feel like there's this energy that's kind of negative, and unsure. And so I've definitely seen it in my industry. Have you seen a shift in people and the dynamics in companies and employees?
Yeah, I think that workplace dynamics are definitely shifting. I think the shift is being driven by a handful of things. I think we are just experiencing a lot of cumulative stress as a society for many different reasons. I think that people in particular in the younger generation have different expectations about what a supportive workplace looks like, what they want in their workplace. And I think there is some, I don't want to call it friction, but there is some pressure between maybe traditional business models and what staff wants now. And I think there is a lot of demand to create shift in the leadership side of that, because the younger generation are the future of our workplaces. They are the ones that we need to attract and retain. And so figuring out how to create cultures that really support that. And I also think there's a really interesting and important dynamic right now between how workplaces shifted because of COVID and having to go all virtual and what that created in workplaces. And now this growing demand for people to come back into the office. And there is a tension between those two things. And I think all of those things have people just a bit uneasy right now. And I think when we are in a place of uncertainty or we're feeling some discomfort, the default mode is negative, right? The default mode is, what do I need to notice so that I can protect myself, so that I can be prepared? So I think it does tend toward a bit of a negative energy.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting too, because I've had a lot of clients or family members, friends that have lost their jobs recently. And I would say 2 or 3 years ago, it was very, very easy to get a job. And right now it is not. Like there's pressure with increased cost everywhere. Both companies are feeling it, employees are feeling it, and you go to the grocery store and it's crazy. I'll use the Oreos as an example because my husband loves them. I do not. But like the box keeps getting smaller and yet it's the same price or more expensive. And so it's the same thing with everything. And so I feel like that is definitely a pressure that is affecting everybody. And so what else do you think is the shift or the gap between the leadership of a company and the employees?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing I'm seeing right now is this need to shift from more like command and control environments that are very based in org charts and hierarchical structures and sort of a do as I say kind of culture, to really noticing our interpersonal impact and taking a lot of responsibility for leading from that place. So spending a lot more time focusing on the human side of work. I often will say, like, let's just stop calling it leadership and let's just start calling it how we human together in the workplace, because that is what is going to create more success moving forward. We are such a connected world. Everybody's talking, and people talk about their experience and how it feels to work for a company. And most people aren't super happy at work and they talk about those things. So how do we create cultures that actually bring people what feels good to them? I don't say like what they want. I'm not talking about like catering to everybody, but what I am talking about is creating an environment where people feel supported, where people feel valued. And I think there's a lot that we're trending toward
Mhm.
in what makes a company have like higher levels of retention and more internal growth and development so that people can really have a good experience of work.
Yeah. No, I like those things that you mentioned, and it is more of a team environment. And it I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and basically it's very interesting because kids nowadays, it seems like parents are afraid to say no to their children. And this isn't all over the place, but I'm watching where kids do a lot more that they want to do, and parents are afraid to stand up. And so I feel like that same attitude is moving into the workplace that, hey, I want you to do this, or hey, you need to do this. And they're like, I don't agree. Or,
Mhm. Right.
um, so how do you feel like as a leader in a company that you can get your employees to get on board and work the way you want them to?
Yeah. So the biggest component is building connection, is getting to know people as humans, caring about them. And I think the other piece of this is we need to really develop our skill sets in giving people feedback and developing them into the employees that we need them to be
Mhm.
versus just telling them to be that way and expecting that they actually will be.
Mhm.
People do need feedback. They want feedback. It's something that the younger generation in particular says they want much more than they're actually getting. But a lot of leaders don't feel super comfortable giving people
Mhm.
critical feedback.
Yeah.
And most of them haven't been trained to do it, right? And most people get into leadership jobs because of their technical skills, that they did great in their role as an individual contributor. So they get promoted into leadership,
Mhm.
or we didn't love being an individual contributor. So we stopped and came and, built our own businesses, right? But then we're in these leadership roles where we maybe probably didn't even get any training on how to be a leader.
Yeah.
And so, really stepping into that role and saying, these individuals are not going to spontaneously become who I want them to be. Like, I have to give them feedback. I have to provide guidance and resources and have coaching conversations with people so that they can grow into that employee. I think in particular for like Gen X potentially,
Mhm.
we weren't, we were very independent. We grew up kind of having to make our own way and be successful. And the younger generation, as you said, often get a lot of what they want, don't have as much experience hearing no, haven't had to figure as many things out on their own. And so they bring that into the workplace and there can be a disconnect between like just go do it. Like why are you just doing this thing? And a younger, maybe someone from the younger generation who's like, I just don't know. Like I need advice, I need guidance, I need support.
Well, I was thinking about this earlier. From seventh grade to 12th grade, I had a paper route. And people are like, what's a paper route? Right? Because there's no longer newspapers. But I mean, we got up at 5 in the morning. We folded 400 papers because we had four routes. And then we went and delivered all those. I mean, that was hard work, especially as a young kid. And nowadays, there's no newspaper, there's nothing. And so kids sit on these video games, or they sit on their computers, or they sit doing whatever. And first of all, they come out of high school never having a job. And then they think they're worth $25 an hour. And they don't want to work full time. They think that they're these serial entrepreneurs that, hey, if I just work for myself. And I really think the pandemic kind of changed because there is a lot more people that have created their own businesses, and especially online. And so do you see a change also where, like you said, people are not prepared. They don't know how to work. They don't know what to do. They haven't held a job, so they don't know what it means. And they've started these companies that are taking off and being successful. They didn't go to college because college is too expensive. They hired a mentor. I mean, that's like this big shift now as well. And so do you see that there's a disconnect there as well, or do you not? Where there's these entrepreneurs that didn't go to college, they don't have the schooling to know how to run the business. They don't know how to have a job because they didn't have to punch a clock and make sure that they were doing stuff. Like, do you see a shift in the marketplace like that or no?
So I think the bigger difference is that it's just a different approach to work.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily think one is right or wrong or better.
Right.
I just think they're different. So that's
Okay.
why I think it's so important that we spend a lot of time getting to know each other as people. What are our values? What are our thoughts? Even as the leader of a company, probably the most valuable thing you can do from an attraction and retention perspective is actually get to know people, right? Is go talk to new staff, make sure you're understanding like what's important to them, what are they looking for, what kind of feedback do they want, and what have they learned from their experiences and how they came up through, because that will be more reflective probably of what's going to be successful in the future, because I don't think that's going to slow down.
Right.
So I think the more we can build a workplace that, I'm not going to say like caters to that, but what I'm more thinking is like really understands it, builds a space where people can be successful regardless of how they entered the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
But that takes a lot of, I do a lot of like facilitated conversation to help people understand the different perspectives at the table,
Mm-hmm.
because it can be hard on our own to just have that conversation, to keep an open mind, to truly dig into what that looks like and how do we make it successful here in our space.
I, that is such an interesting concept because, I'm going to use my husband and he probably, again, he never listens to this and I'm sorry and I love you, honey, if you do. But my husband grew up and I call him like an old man because his parents were 100 when he was born. And I say 40, but now 40 is not a big deal. But back then, it was a huge deal and a huge generation gap. So, I mean, his dad was 40 and I was 40 when I had my last kid. So, like I said, it's not as big of a difference now. But um, he watches like World War II movies and these Westerns. Like that is how he loves to spend his time besides sports. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you are so old. And so he expects, like, I tell you what to do, you go do it just because I'm the dad, I've earned my respect and you do what I say. Well, I have these little kids and they're like, no. And especially nowadays, like I have two special needs kids, so they had IEPs or they had 504s, my kids did. And so it's like, well, let's create these rules for them and let's create this plan for them so that they can be successful. And my husband looks at that and is like, this is not how it should be, because if they go out in the workforce, they're not going to create this special way. They just have to learn to follow the rules. And I'm like, no, the rules have changed. They do make accommodations. They do change things. And so do you see this generational gap between I am the boss, therefore you do what I say because I have earned that respect, versus the kid that's like, well, I've had accommodations all my life and I expect you to make those accommodations for me still. So do you
Yeah.
see that? Is that some of the conflict you're seeing in workplaces still?
So what I'm seeing more right now is and I mostly work with leaders who are really
Right.
trying to figure this out.
Okay.
Right. So who are actually in the space of like, all right,
Okay.
how are we going to do this differently so that we can have a better experience? So my perspective is definitely going to be probably biased that way, just because
That's good.
that's where I spend my time.
Yeah.
But what we're really talking about is just creating equity-centered spaces,
Hmm.
right? It's creating spaces where people with different needs, where people with different experiences, people with different just upbringings, or all the different ways we see the world, right, can be seen and heard and valued and have the resources they need to be successful.
Hmm.
And we know from a business perspective that the workplace does better. Like we have better, we solve problems more quickly and we create better outcomes and we move work forward more quickly when we create spaces that really supports. I don't want to say is, providing accommodations, but as much as just providing the support that we need to be successful.
Yeah. And there is an uptick in um, autism and ADD and things like that. And I think that's a whole nother topic, but I think that we are a changing environment and world, and what it was like several years ago is not, I mean, there's so many more preservatives. There's so many other things now that I really do think are impacting us. And so because of that, it does have to change. So let's make the shift because we've talked about the leadership stuff.
Yeah.
Um, as a parent, what are your
Mhm.
recommendations to be able to prepare our children to be effective members of society that
Oh, yeah.
get in the workplace?
So well, as parents who are also entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
I think that's like, is thinking about, I talk about my work a
Mhm.
lot. Not from like, I'm so busy and this, but just from like, here's what I'm working on today, or here's some of the conversations I'm having, or here's what I learned today. And I'm very transparent about that with my son because he knows that my work is a really big and important piece of my life. But it also gets him interested. So like he actually is like interested in working. I
Mhm.
always say like if you're in an environment where people like working and your parents like their jobs and they talk positively about what they're doing versus like, the old Wonder Years, like, oh, work's work. It's like, no, work is like,
Yeah.
I love it. I am excited about what I'm doing and who I'm talking to and how I'm supporting leaders or what kinds of meetings I'm facilitating and so my son is like already talking, he's 11 and he's already talking about like, oh, when he gets a job or where he wants his first job to be. And he'll come up and he asks me if he does a little bit of work in my business for me, some shredding and sorting and some other things. But if we're excited about being like an active contributor in the workplace and we model that, our kids are going to have a different relationship to work than someone who didn't see that or who heard a lot of like complaining about work or, only focusing on retirement kind of things.
That's a good point. I mean, I'm listening to this seminar that I'm in. It's a 3-day conference, and I jumped out for this appointment, but they're talking about money today
Mhm.
and how our beliefs around money. And some of the people got up saying, I never even thought I could make 6 figures because I wasn't raised to be able to do that. And I thought if I could make over 100,000, then that was a big deal. And nowadays, if you make 100,000, good luck surviving, right? And so it is interesting that we influence our children so much. And if it's somebody said once that they said, don't say, oh, we can't afford that, because you're teaching your child that money is very scarce and it's sparse, and it's not. Like you really can have what you want if you put your mind to it, especially nowadays. I think it's way easier today than ever before. And so I think our our discussion or vocabulary when we use it around work is valuable. That, oh, I have to go to work today. No, you don't have to. But if you
Right.
want to live in the house that you do and drive the car that you do and wear the clothes and eat the food, then you get to go to work so that you can have the lifestyle that you want. And so I think that we really do need to start thinking about how we speak about it. And oh my gosh. And life is rough right now, especially in my industry. And so I am frustrated. But in the previous years, I've absolutely loved what I've done. And so I really do think kids are watching and we have to be careful. So that's great advice.
They're watching, they're listening, they're calling us out on anything that doesn't connect with what we said before.
Yep. That's so true. So
But I
true.
also think there is a lot of value because the sorry, I was gonna say is there's a lot of value in making sure our kids have a voice
Yeah.
because their peers do. So we
Yeah.
want to teach them. What does that look like? How do they hear no? I
Mhm.
think one of the most important things we can teach our kids is to hear the word no and
Yes.
to not give them everything they ask for just because, if we can or just because we can,
Hmm.
because it's a really important thing to be able to feel that discomfort
Hmm.
of hearing no and then to keep going.
Hmm.
I think it's one of the most important things as a business person is to be able to hear the no, to get the person to not, who says, okay, we think we're going to work together and then we're not, or to do the marketing thing that doesn't work out or whatever it is, because that is a lot of what happens in work and so I think it's really important as parents that we do give them that experience, let them feel the discomfort. Our feelings are meant to be felt, not to be covered over with something else, or, we're not meant to have to fix everything. We can just let kids have that discomfort and have that experience so they can grow their own resilience and their own stick-to-itiveness and all of the things that will really create that success in the long term.
I like that. And I think at least my girls have learned the art of negotiation because when you say no, well, but mom, if I or how about we And so I'm realizing and I kind of start to laugh. I'm like, okay, so we're negotiating right now. And then you have to decide, is this something that is okay to negotiate? Like bedtime? No, we're not going to negotiate that because you need to get your sleep. But having this whatever. And I was in line, we have this place called Lagoon. It's kind of an amusement park in Utah. And I was watching these people ahead of us. And so this kid was probably 8 or 9 years old. And there's a go-kart that's in addition to the lagoon, like entrance pass. And it's $3 for him. He wasn't tall enough to drive his own car, so it's $3 for him to ride with his dad. And I'm sitting there listening to this whole conversation, which I actually was very impressed. The dad's like, okay, son, well, it's going to cost you $3 and you're going to have to pay for this out of your own money. And so is this something that you really think is worth it, or do you want to go do something else? And they probably had a couple-minute conversation, and the son's like, no, 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 I really want to do this. He goes, okay, but you understand this is going to cost you. I'm not paying for this for you. And I thought, what a good father, because at that age, he's trying to teach his son the value of money and how if he's going to work for it because he gets this allowance, then he's going to have to pay for this extra thing. And so I think that we're not teaching our kids overall responsibility as much. Kids are just
Mhm.
used to getting things and not seeing that there's a consequence. Like the parents going to have to pay for it, and how are you going to pay for it? And so I just thought kudos to that dad that
Yeah,
that's rare. Not with
it is
everyone,
rare.
but
Yeah,
hmm
but it is important, and I think it's yeah, there's a lot. My son probably hears no way more than he would like to, but I also feel like he also then has a very different relationship to what he does have, or he knows that there are choices involved
hmm
and resources involved and all of the things. So I applaud that dad and another because it's not easy, it's it can be there's a lot of emotion there.
hmm Yep.
Ours and theirs, let's be honest.
Absolutely. Teaching consequences. Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So if you are sitting on a park bench and you have a 19-year-old, well, a brand new mother, I don't care how old she is, but she's a brand new mother and she comes and sits next to you and you start having a conversation. And she's like, okay, give me one piece of advice. All of your experience you've had as a mom to date, what is one piece of advice you wish you would have known at my stage in my pregnancy and motherhood life?
I think the most important thing is to be present.
Hmm.
Just be there for it. I think there's so many things that cause distraction.
Mm-hmm.
So many things calling for our attention. And the more we can set those things aside and just be with our children,
Mm-hmm.
then the rest of it actually, all these other things we're talking about, being
Mm-hmm.
able to say no, being able to have honest conversation, being able to share how we're feeling or apologize when we're not at our best or any of those things. All of that's easier if we're really present and connected.
I agree. And that's something that as an entrepreneur, sometimes it gets hard because you're working, 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 and setting those boundaries and making sure that your kids know that uh, you're there for them and that you will be and that you're focused on them. Because time, I cannot tell you how quickly time flies. I have 4 that have left the nest. I have these 2 that are left, and I'm grateful. But I think as a parent, you just need to understand that, yeah, as long as they know you're there for them and that you care about them and that you will do anything for them when it comes to you have their back and you're supportive of them, not giving them everything. That's not what I mean. So I think
Right.
that's good advice.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is if this mom is also an entrepreneur, is to really know the non-negotiables of the personal life,
Uh,
the things you will not miss, the things that you will say no to any client to
yeah.
make sure you are there for, or the times of the day you work and don't, and just holding those boundaries as firmly as you can,
Mhm.
because they make all the difference between enjoying that personal life and motherhood
Mhm.
And I honestly don't think that all the extra hours or canceling on, I don't think it's ever worth it from a business perspective.
I agree. It's interesting because Sunday is a very special day for me and my family. We go to church, but it's also, that's the one day. And I try to tell my clients, hey, Sunday is my time with my family. That's my one day that I'm going to focus on my family. Some people are very respectful of that. Others are not. So the two times that I've said, okay, I'm going to go show them a home, or I'm going to go do this or that, it never works out.
It never works out.
No.
Isn't that the truth?
It's true. It has never worked out. And so from now on, I'm going to say, you want me to come on Sunday? Okay. But you need to understand it's going to bomb later. Like, feel like that's my punishment. And I mean, even being on vacation in August, I was so stressed out and spent so much time trying to save this deal and do all this stuff. And guess what? They ended up canceling anyway. I'm like, whoa. I wasted so much time away from my family and focused on my family because of this thing that didn't even work out. And so I think that the non-negotiables is a very good point that you really have to figure out. And if you set the boundaries, people listen, because the doctor's office, are they open 24/7? No, they are not. They're open during business hours. And people somehow figure out how to arrange their schedule to be able to go during business hours. And so the same thing can happen, not in every industry, but in most industries. If you really do set your boundaries and your non-negotiables, things will somehow fall into place, and you'll attract the clients that you want, not the ones that you don't want.
That's right.
Good advice. Thank you.
It's easier once you've gotten a little bit further into the business building. And I mean, I will say it is definitely like, it is very hard at the beginning, but the more I've realized, like, it's okay to sign off and say I'm on vacation this week. It's okay to say I don't have time until July, or whatever, like whenever, and the people who are the right fit, they'll stick around for you.
It's true. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun talking with you.
You as well. And moms, just remember that boundaries are a good thing for your employees and for your life in general, and especially your family. But in addition to that, really making sure that you hone in on how to bridge that gap, and really conversations. It all starts with conversations and getting to know your employees, because if you do, then they begin to trust you even more, and you can be more successful because they'll want to grow with you. So go out and make it a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.